please.
Second.
For that session, that will be approved. And we're going to move right to the report.
Thank you, Michael. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, as always, for being here, and thank you for your active engagement and support of the university. I really do appreciate these meetings because we leave this room with always great recommendations and great ideas about the initiatives that we're developing and how we can continue to enhance and expand and strengthen our institution. So I want to make sure that I continue to reiterate my most sincere appreciation to all of you for your guidance and your counsel as we continue to move forward. And there are many things to come at the university that we will continue to come back to you and ask you for your feedback and advice and guidance. We've had a great year, and certainly since we last met, a great summer at the university and an excellent start to the academic year. Let me just highlight two things from the summer, which you probably have heard about. And one of them was the major initiative we undertook in partnership with the state government and the office of the governor, which was our engagement in the trips that we had to Puerto Rico to focus on recovery efforts following Hurricane Maria. As you may know, I serve as the co-chair of the SUNY Task Force, what we call the Puerto Rico SUNY Task Force, and focusing on these initiatives. Throughout the summer, from May through the end of August, SUNY alone sent over 780 students to Puerto Rico to focus on recovery efforts from recovery in agricultural fields to cleaning up beaches. By the end of August, our students, along with CUNY students, had ended up restoring 178 houses in Puerto Rico, houses in which people lived in that needed to be brought up to living conditions. We have developed a number of partnerships with the University of Puerto Rico, with the Catholic University of Puerto Rico as well. We're building bridges. We're talking about academic programs, research initiatives, and things of that nature. The governor announced last week that the program was so successful that he would like us to continue with the program. So probably starting as early as the spring, we need to work out the details. We will send another 500 SUNY and CUNY students to Puerto Rico to continue to focus on the recovery efforts. The impact that these students have had in the communities of Puerto Rico has been fantastic. I've been there on a number of occasions with our students, with the chancellor, with the governor and the governor's staff, and we've seen firsthand the impact that these students have had. And as important, these experiences have been transformational for our students. It's just a great learning experience that contributes to the educational opportunities that we provide at the university. So we will continue to do this. I'm very excited as the co-chair of the task force. Of course, you know, this is also my professional research that I do on the socioeconomic impacts of disasters, so there's a professional motivation there. And as all of you know, I'm from Puerto Rico as well, and I have a lot of family in Puerto Rico, so there's also a personal motivation as well. But this is a SUNY-wide initiative that has really garnered a lot of coverage from the university and our students and the SUNY system. Just so you have an idea, 31 institutions, 31 SUNY institutions sent students to Puerto Rico. 31 SUNY institutions. That is quite an amazing accomplishment.
So how many of our students do you know?
In terms of our students, we've sent about, in May we sent 35, probably around 50 to 60 students, Jim, is that?
That's right, and it was the Provost's office, the Anne-Marie Murray, and a lot of good people that coordinated it and made it happen. So I think the president's spot on with them.
So right around that number, and we already have an ongoing program with the College of Emergency Preparedness, Homeland Security, and Cybersecurity with the University of Puerto Rico in Miami West, and it's an academic program, and we've been sending faculty and students there as well, probably in the winter of the spring session. So this is something that's long-term, sustainable, and thanks to the help of academic affairs, student affairs, advancement, and others, this has become a major initiative for the university and for SUNY. Another major thing that we accomplished with Vice President Sinai, we traveled to Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea to meet with alumni, meet with great donors of the university, and meet with partner institutions that we have in all these 3 countries to continue to expand and enhance the internationalization of the university, which you already know is a core priority for UAlbany, right? And so we continue to move in that direction. As I said, it's been a great opening to the fall semester and the academic year. We've started with a whole variety of initiatives, both in student affairs and academic affairs, and athletics, to welcome our students to the university, continuing to build community. On September 7th, the provost and I hosted an event that I hope will become a new tradition for UAlbany. It was sort of a big picnic in the football stadium, in which we welcomed faculty and staff. There was a huge turnout, and people were delighted to see that we were coming together as part of the university, just to sit around, get to know each other, and have conversations, and provide some food, and just generate this sense of community, which we will continue to build on. Also, next week, we are re-initiating, I should say, our recognition to our faculty and staff who have served at the university 25, 30, 35, and 40 years of service. So we're having an employee recognition luncheon, again, to continue to build the community and recognize the people for their service. And so when all those people come together for that luncheon, we'll have 3,660 years of experience in that room, right? And so that's a lot of experience. But that is incredibly important for us to recognize our colleagues, our faculty and staff who have done great work for the university throughout the years. And talking about recognizing folks, let me introduce to you our new Director of Office and Equity and Compliance and Title IX Compliance Officer, Amelia Barbadoro, who just joined us recently. She was in the Office of Human Resources at UAlbany, and then she arrived from Spring, and now she moved to this new position. And prior to joining us at UAlbany, Leah was the Assistant Commissioner and Director of Equal Opportunity and Diversity Development in the New York State Office of Children and Family Services. So Leah comes with an extensive amount of experience to lead this office, which is truly critical to our institution. And given all the issues that you've heard across the country regarding Title IX and other types of issues, we feel that UAlbany is very well equipped, has a strong foundation, has been recognized to some extent as a national model in this area. And so under the leadership of Leah and others, we will continue to move very strongly forward. So please welcome Leah to the group, and Leah, thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
This afternoon. So we've made a significant progress throughout this past year. As you know, a few weeks ago, I celebrated my first year anniversary at the University at Albany, and it's been sort of a huge ride, right? I mean, I can't believe a year has gone by, but it certainly has, and a lot of initiative, a lot of enthusiasm, and a lot of engagement from the development of the strategic plan, the branding initiative, which you've heard about, fundraising and comprehensive campaign, which is moving forward very strongly, organizational restructuring, continuing to build the research infrastructure. We have some great accomplishments in that area. You've heard about our athletic successes and many other achievements. So the university is certainly a university that's on the move, and we're making some great strides thanks to all the people that you see in the back and are doing some amazing work in our deans, department chairs, faculty, and staff. One of the major accomplishments this year also focuses on strategic enrollment management and a move to really take a comprehensive look at enrollments at the University at Albany. And as you already know, this past year, last year, we broke the record for the largest applicant pool in the history of UAlbany. And so we, for the first time, admitted our freshman class in May of this year. This is the first time we've done this since when?
When you say 2005, I think that's probably right.
Yeah, and that has major implications. And What if we didn't do that? That means that we continue to accept students throughout the summer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And for the orientation services that we provide in order to get organized, housing, we're working on this throughout the beginning of the semester. Having the class being accepted by May allows us basically 3 months of planning for our faculty, for our staff, for residence halls, for the orientation services. So this is truly a huge accomplishment for the university. We also admitted about 2,700 new freshmen to the institution and close to 1,400 transfer students. We've reversed the decline in the SAT scores and maintained a very high level of diversity in terms of underrepresented minority students. And one of the great news is that we also met our enrollment targets at both the undergraduate and graduate level. And I've been told that it's been quite a few years since we've never met those target enrollments. And this year, for the first time, we met those enrollments. And that is critically important for us because we make budget projections based on those enrollments. And so meeting those targets has a significant and very positive impact on the financial situation of the institution. And so we're still finalizing the numbers, but as of today, we have 17,937 students at UAlbany. About 13,600 are undergraduate, and about 4,300 are graduate. And so by fall of next year, we will have exceeded the 18,000 mark for our students. And so we will continue to grow. As I reported last time, we have a group that's looking at the optimal size for UAlbany. And so we know we're going to continue to grow in a strategic manner, particularly focusing on some programs, especially graduate programs, but there will be continued growth at the university. So we're very enthusiastic about the growth that we experienced this year, almost about 200 students more than we had last year. So that's clearly very important for us.
Excuse me, do we understand what's driving those numbers? In other words, I don't know, like, is it the Excelsior program? What are the things that?
I think it's a combination of factors, and number one, not necessarily in this order, but one factor is we're out there very aggressively recruiting students. We're engaging much more marketing dissemination of our programs. We have 2 new colleges, Emergency Preparedness and the College of Engineering and Applied Sciences. We have the Excelsior Scholarship. Last year, we had a little bit over 1,000 students that participated in Excelsior. So we think it's a combination of factors. And as we continue to work with advancement in public relations and marketing in our branding campaign and continue to get out the word, not only nationally but internationally, we've got some great plans coming up in that particular area. The visibility of the university continues to increase. The marketing of our major research programs and academic programs will continue to bring more and more students to the university. So I think it is a combination of factors.
Even the lacrosse program.
There you go.
Well, you never
Hey, that all helps.
There you go.
Everything gets you on TV, right?
National stage, I agree.
And like I told another group previous, and we should not underestimate the power and impact of athletics, right?
I thought you were going to say ESPN. Okay, yeah.
The same thing has happened to other universities. People start hearing about us nationally because of our competition in lacrosse and our success in lacrosse, and they all of a sudden say, by the way, what's happening at UAlbany? What do they offer? What academic programs do they offer? And you see that there's an uptick in the people that visit our websites, which we're in the process of redesigning as well. So I think it's really a combination of all these things that are really, really helping us move forward, right?
Okay.
And the excitement of all these people who are here.
So as far as Excelsior, you said last year we had 1,000, and this year, do we know how many we have?
I'm not sure that we know yet how many Excelsior students
I
we
know
have.
they're still, speaking on behalf of financial, I know they're still going through the certification process. It does take some time, so you have to send files back to Haskin and they have to cross-reference data. So I don't think the numbers are.
Do you have a sense, though?
Logically, there will be an uptick because the threshold, the income threshold
Has
has
gone up,
increased.
right.
So there'll be more families that are eligible for these subsidies.
Plus you'll have it.
Well, that's by 10.
No.
It went from 100 to 110,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
but by 10.
So we expect that for the next meeting that we have, we will be able to provide you concrete numbers. Even the enrollment numbers that I gave you, we still haven't finalized those numbers, right? So we'll expect some changes there as well, and we'll be able to report. But I agree with Todd. I think, at the very least, they'll remain stable, but there should be an uptick in those numbers as well.
And I think it was after the last council meeting, Jim and I had a brief conversation, I think, on the way out on this. And time flies, so I don't remember, Michael, if you remember, if it was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. We actually had one of our council meetings, almost all the discussion was on sort of this topic. And our new enrollment management person who we brought from Binghamton gave a presentation. And to me, it'd be really nice, maybe if we had the next meeting, the following one, to maybe go back to that and say, this is where we were, this is where we are. Again, the conversation Jim and I had was, do we look to be more selective, or do we look at a different approach? I think it'd be good for all of us to get updated where we're at on that.
And we will be happy to do that, maybe not for the next meeting, but the following one, as we finalize the work of our optimal size committee, and the executive council gets together, so we can actually, at that point in time, even provide you some projections of where we think, what is the optimal size. And we're looking at all sorts of things, right, in terms of number of faculty, facilities, residence halls, student services that we need to provide, right? Some areas you have some capacity to grow, in some other areas, unless you make, like in student services, mental health services, unless we make additional investments in that area, we're really not going to be able to expand the student population significantly. So some areas will require some investment, and some will really not require any investments because we have the capacity to grow. But I think we can come back to you, not next week, but the following, and even provide some projections on where we think we're going to be in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, one of the things that we took, and I think we kind of opened Pandora's box, if I remember, and we said, there's numbers and then there's numbers, right? It's what do we want with respect to the quality of the number? Is it, are we wanting just greater numbers to hit a number, or are we looking for a certain academic standard? And what's more important? And it was a great discussion, as I recall, and if everybody believes that, then I'll say that I brought it up, but I don't know. but that was part of it as well. So yeah, I think that's a great topic,
And I think
we can dive back into it.
I was going to say, I also think breaking it down a bit by the majors, because I suspect there are some that are hot and maybe oversubscribed, and other ones that are dying on the vine. And I think understanding that and understanding that mix is also, because do you make room in one and get rid of the other, or do you make, there's.
And we have all this data. I've carefully analyzed that data, so I can sort of probably present it to you in terms of what are the programs that are growing, which are the programs that are not, right? So we're looking at all that because we need to look at, in terms of the programs.
Well, that's going to determine too how they.
Exactly.
Because I think to Michael's point, and not to make sure you have sort of the input, so as you're doing your committee work, I think that the general consensus of the group was we wanted to improve scores. It wasn't necessarily, if we grow, great, but we want to sort of change the profile of our student.
And we're on the same page, and for example, let me reiterate that this year, despite the small growth, we had about 2.1%. Our quality did not decrease, quite the contrary, right? Diversity did not suffer, quite the contrary. That's an important mix that we want to maintain, because as you already know, not only are we one of the most diverse research universities in the country, but we are now being recognized, and we're being invited left and right throughout the country, right, to a variety of conferences, et cetera, to talk about the success of our students, and particularly underrepresented minority students, while throughout the country, people are looking at how to narrow the gap between white student success and underrepresented minority students' success, because there's a wide gap. If you look at our graduation data and our retention data, our underrepresented minority students are doing much better in all these regards than the general population at the university. So clearly, we're doing some things that are incredibly going well through the EOP program and a variety of other initiatives that are resulting in the higher success rates of underrepresented minority students, and we're being recognized nationally for that work that we're doing. And so this is a good conversation, and I think that would probably be an entire conversation, right?
It was last time.
And so
I think that's
we'll plan on doing that as we move forward. Talking about, good news in that area, New Albany moved up in the rankings from 150 to 141 in the 2019 U.S. News and World Report of Best Colleges. So that's an upward mobility in our rankings, a significant upward mobility. We also moved up 10 points in the Washington Monthly ranking, so that was also good. And in the Washington Monthly ranking, New Albany was ranked 43rd nationally based on contributions to the public good in 3 evenly weighted categories: improving social mobility. And as you know, we have been recognized nationally as an engine of economic opportunity for our students in producing groundbreaking research and promoting public service. So that UAlbany was able to rank that high nationally speaks incredibly well of the work that our faculty, our staff, and our administrators are doing here at the university. So we hope to keep that momentum and moving the university in the right direction. Moving to another topic, Middle States. We are in the process of preparing our self-study for the Middle States accreditation. We already have the committee that has been established, and we're basing our Middle States accreditation on sort of our moving document, right? Our strategic plan for the university. So those are closely intertwined. Michael, I believe that you're going to be serving on the governance work group of the self-study, and so we would like to continue to engage the members of the council who will be doing that in terms of our accreditation, which is incredibly important because we need to be accredited. We anticipate no issues, but we don't take anything for granted. And one of the good things is that we're lining things up with our strategic plan. And so for me, one of the wonderful news and sort of music to my ears is, I just met today with the dean of the School of Business, and he was showing me the plan that he presented to his school, the School of Business, and throughout the strategic plan was embedded in there. The dean of the College of Arts and Sciences was talking to our new faculty. She was outlining the core priorities of our strategic plan. The dean of the School of Public Health has developed the strategic plan for his school. All embedded throughout was our strategic plan. The vice provost for undergraduate studies is developing all kinds of initiatives, all closely tied with the strategic plan. We received a copy of the research magazine, that we just produced. And one of the things that Jim Diaz's office did was tie this to our 2 core priorities of student success and research excellence. So we see really quite naturally and fluidly that the strategic plan is just becoming immersed throughout the entire institution. And that's what you really want in a strategic plan, for colleges, departments, and units to make the plan their own. So we're delighted about that. And so we will continue to move forward with our Middle States accreditation, and we will keep you informed, but more importantly, we want you engaged in this process. Our Middle States liaison came during the spring, and a number of you met with our Middle States liaison, and she was very enthusiastic to see that the University Council is a critical part of this. In your report, in your documents, you also received a report we submitted a few weeks ago, the annual report to the Chancellor. All the SUNY institutions were required to submit a report to the Chancellor. And there we outlined some of the major accomplishments for 2017 and 18 and our major goals for 2018 and 19. You would be surprised that we decided to report our accomplishments and report our goals for next year around the 5 core priorities for the university at Albany. So here we're developing, we've talked a lot about, the identity of the university, who we are, where are we going, what are we aiming for, what do we want to achieve. I think we're accomplishing that as an institution and moving everything forward in that direction. So if you...
Did they ever give you feedback on that? Or is that just one way, or does it go, do they give you?
Well, we expect that they will, and actually I talked with Joe Porter, who's the one in charge at SUNY to pull them together and write reports to the Chancellor. We had a good conversation. I expect that we will get additional feedback. But then again, it's 64 reports that they have to go through, right? So-
We'll get it by the time of our next five-year strategic plan.
But, you know, if you haven't had an opportunity to do so, I just encourage you to skim through the document, because it tells you about the great things that have been accomplished at the university and how we are moving forward. Just moving quickly to other news, as you already know, and I announced to the council through a letter we sent earlier a few weeks ago, Provost Jim Steller will be stepping down from his position enroll and return to the faculty at the end of this semester, beginning January 1st. He'll return to the faculty. He'll be on leave to work on his scholarship and preparing other things as he moves forward. So I just want to express my deepest and most sincere appreciation to Jim for all the great work that he has done. And let me just name 3 important things, right, that just come up to the top. As you know, when there was a transition in the presidency, Jim took the role of interim president, and I can tell you for a fact, you know, this university did not stand still, right? Interim leaderships always tend to, or sometimes tend to, sort of things stagnate. Jim did not allow that to happen. He continued to move the university forward. He continued to engage with the vice presidents and the deans to make sure that the university was well prepared to receive the new president. So that's amazing work that Jim accomplished. As you know, Jim was the co-chair of the strategic plan, and you know, I don't need to say much about that. This really speaks for itself, and the comments that I made before speak for themselves. So if it were not for Jim and Mike Christakis, who took the leadership role in the development of the strategic plan and now the implementation of the strategic plan, we would not be where we are today. So this is an amazing amount of work. And of course, you know that Jim has hired in the recent 6 months or so, or to a year, some amazing deans, right? In the School of Public Health, in the School of Business, in the School of Social Welfare, among others. I mean, in the School of Education as well. Some just outstanding deans that will put us in a great position to continue to move the institution forward. And throughout this transition process, Jim has been a great colleague, a great team player, and is working very closely with me to ensure that we have a successful transition and a successful search. So I would ask you to join me in giving Jim a round of applause. So we're going to move forward. We send out a memo to the university community asking them for recommendations for the search committee. We will ask the university council, as Michael and I as well talked, we need representation from the university council in the search committee as well. For this particular search, we are going to hire a search firm because it's a critical, I mean, not that your position was not important, right? Let me just clarify that for the record.
Let me take a shot.
How quickly they
I was
would get.
gonna say.
Remember last April, I was a new guy.
Exactly. And so we believe it's important to have a search firm engage with us for this search. Given all the exciting things that are happening at the university, I think we will have a great and successful search moving forward. So we anticipate that within a couple of weeks we'll have the search finalized and allow us to move forward, and we'll begin the process. And so we're going to try to be as expedient, as efficient as possible, but not sacrificing anything along the way. So we'll take as long as it takes, but we will get another top-notch provost that comes to us and work with the institution to continue to move us forward. So I expect that the University Council, and I hope, and I know, I should say, that the University Council will be actively engaged in this process. And just to bring this to conclusion, in the last meeting we had, we talked about a potential SEPT gift that we were trying to finalize with SUNY. Unfortunately, we were not able to settle on an agreement for that gift, so the gift did not go through for a variety of reasons, and so we continue to move forward. I want to thank Michael, and I want to thank Sept for their strong commitment to this institution for all the great things they have done, not only in the areas of athletics, but in a variety of other initiatives that we have engaged in. And so the good news is that we continue to make great progress, and we're being incredibly successful in our capital campaign. And
Don't steal my thunder.
I know. That's what I was going to say. Now I was going to say, and Fardeen will bring you up.
So you can do his report.
And so we're very, very optimistic about the future of the institution and our capital campaign, which is looking incredibly good. And Fardeen will talk about this, but we'll be launching the capital campaign in homecoming, October 19th to 21st. So we hope to see some of you at our events. November 1st is Citizen Laureate, which again, Fardeen can talk a little bit about that. And we continue to have great celebrations across the university, great events, major initiatives. So we would like to continue to have the University Council actively engage in these types of initiatives. So once again, thank you for your engagement and thank you for your support. And Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Fantastic. Thank you. I just want to remind you, as you are traversing the globe and exposing the great works here of the university and yourself to everyone else, that you and I have a verbal agreement that as long as I sit here, you will be okay.
So you better sit there for a very long time.
So I want to talk to you very briefly. We don't really talk about the council makeup, and many of us know sometimes it's a little bit of a mystery. It appears as though the door may be opened a little bit for us as we were asked for suggestions for
What a concept.
So I want to just talk very briefly about council makeup, council appointment process, and maybe a better way for us to consider, okay? And again, this is the very beginning of this. So the next page, and I'm not going to read this to you, this is just the membership, and I think you all understand how this works. But we have 10 voting members, 9 appointed by the governor, and the chair is appointed by the governor. The officers here on the next page, and you can all keep this. This is just to refresh your memory. But interestingly, if you look at the next page, I think we have Nancy and Mark.
We don't have this.
I'm sorry.
We'll send this out electronically.
Yeah, we'll send it out.
Good, because I
Just
can't
can't
read that.
Let me give you the punchline. These
We're all
are,
expired.
we're all expired. We're all expired except for Nancy
You
and
look
Mark.
pretty good for being
Right?
deceased.
You two are the only ones that
That are
currently are left. And again, as we know, a name could come in and appear on our desk, but this is what we have. And what spurred this is that we were asked for recommendations from the appointments office, as if we had recommendations for members.
That's
of council.
unique.
It
I
is.
mean, in the past, it's been a double secret probation.
Right. Well, that happened to me. where
It happened to me, too.
I came out of.
We had a guy on his way to the meeting one time, only to find out, oh, you're not going to be on anymore, someone else has been, and, who's coming from.
So we're very hopeful that,
No idea.
that we can, that the door is open a little bit, and we're hopeful we can kick the door in. And actually have, in anticipation of that, I'd like the council to consider a process that we could possibly use to take a little bit more control, not of the appointments process, but what do we
A
want?
thoughtful pool,
What do
right?
we
Yeah.
want for the makeup of the council? So there's several things that we obviously need to look at. What are the core competencies? What about diversity and inclusion? What should the selection process itself be? A self-assessment and gap analysis, and how would we assess candidates? So I have been going through this with another board, so I'm kind of familiar with this process. I just throw this out when we talk about the composition. These are just discussion items, right? Not to be discussed right now. But how do we envision the composition of the University Council in the near future? What are those core attributes, skills, knowledge that we want sitting around the table? Do some council members need a deeper knowledge of a particular area or a particular skill, right? Do we need a spokesperson, for example? Are there certain skills that we need? Should we develop a short list for the future? These are all things that we should consider if we're given that opportunity. So, again, primary functions of the council. What is our true north? How do we define success? What are the other things that the president wants from us? Is it advocacy? Is it public representation? What is it that we should be doing, and how should we be doing it? Should we establish that core list of attributes? And I'm certainly not going to read these to you. This is just food for thought in my hopeful world of getting a little bit more control of this process. Additional discussion of other skills. Are there other skills? And I just touched on this. Do we need somebody with a strong financial acumen? To my friend behind me, especially because he's behind me. But are there other things that we need? And certainly diversity and inclusion. And how do we address diversity and inclusion when we talk about it as being one of those things that we are absolutely so proud of in our student body? But shouldn't we actually take a very aggressive role in that sitting around the table? So my question to you is, are we interested in creating a subcommittee to wrestle with these issues and to bring back to the body some recommendations?
How long is the door open?
Pardon me?
How long is the door open?
Well, we're not exactly sure. We're not sure. So it may be that we were invited. This is all being interpreted from a discussion where we were invited to present candidates. So at a minimum, we need to take care of that page that you couldn't read, because maybe those candidates are the reappointment of the people sitting
I'm
on
sure
the
that's
table.
the case.
Right? We need to at least grapple at a minimum with that. But also, while we have that opportunity, why don't we take a bigger swing? This is just my opinion. Why don't we take a bigger swing and say, this is what we would do if we had control. This process, and again, I know I went through it quickly, but I don't want to take too much of our time. If we were a not-for-profit or for-profit corporation, any progressive board goes through a governance process like that to say, who do we populate these seats with? Maybe we should try to do that ourselves.
How many empty seats are there?
Well, there's only 2 seats that are, all of our seats, I believe, are full, right? But there's only 2 people that actually are an active appointment. Yep.
I'm trying to remember the state statute.
Yeah, there's
Is,
statute.
there is, but I can't
So
remember.
it's
Is there a limit?
7-year term,
Seven
but
Can
if
you be
you,
reappointed?
you can be, we
Is there a
can,
maximum number
We've
of
had
years?
people that have gone
we
over
can
for
request
15
reappointment,
years.
but if you came in on another person's term, you pick up in progression of their timeline.
I do know back in the day.
And you fill
and
until.
the day was a long time ago, that the university actually did make recommendations. And then my impression was, it was always still a surprise if somebody actually got selected. And I think those recommendations probably, and I'm going to look over at Fardeen, you probably might not have even been here,
I was here. I've been
might
here
have come
all
out of
the time. Yes.
development?
But we forwarded to the different parts of the school, sent recommendations, and we did the research. And yes, it came from development to the president's office.
Which I actually think is pretty common for other universities as well. But I don't see any reason not to have a committee, and at least, I don't know that we'll come up with the short list, but identify the characteristics of what you might want, and then leave it to the university to figure out who among our base, because the one thing that council has that's different, I think, than any other role, even though, it seems like our responsibilities are limited, is the fact that in many cases, they have the long-term interest of the school. Chancellor doesn't, the people that are in positions, often going to other positions, they're not there. But someone who maybe is an alum or lives here, they're in it for the long haul. And so I think having a committee to think about who are those people going to be, and to what extent should they mirror the university? is
Do
important.
we know what the unwritten rules are in terms of appointments? For example, the mayor was asked for an appointment, for a suggestion for an appointment, that's how I got here. Are there other
Well, and again, what.
legislators who were asked?
So what
I
I'm
have no
suggesting
idea.
is.
I think it's different
one,
That's
do
the
we
unwritten
form a
rules.
committee to take this from a strategic perspective without names? So forgetting names.
Sure.
What is the, what would we like represented around the table? And then from there, we've got to mix it with that question of, all right, what about the people that are currently sitting around the table? And then going forward, you know, whether it comes from development or wherever it comes from, it wouldn't come from this body, right? So we wouldn't be the people saying, hey, you know, I know Sally, and Sally should be.
No, you might, though. It
Ours-
depends
ours
if
is-
once you decide, if you decide the profile,
It
we
could.
might know people who meet
Right.
the profile who could be
Right.
part of the mix.
But
But I
we
think
got,
you could
but
have
the
a
point is,
central
in the
canvas
current
funnel
case,
names.
the whole thing seems to be reversed, where it starts with the person as opposed to the need. And I'm just wondering if we could document what we believe our needs are, and then when we do make a request to the appointments office, that request is supported by, you know, some work behind it. So I'm not hearing any objection to that. So if you could get, when we go offline to JD, if you would be interested in serving on the subcommittee, and that subcommittee, I would suggest, would certainly be a mix of members of the council and certainly with the president or the president's appointees, because this is we serve several things, but one of the most important things we serve is the needs of the president and what you. So I think I would hope you would take an active role in participating. Okay, all right, well, I've taken more time than I thought, but thank you for indulging me. Strategic planning, Michael and Jim, you're on.
All right, so thank you for the time. The President mentioned during his report a number of times how embedded the strategic plan has been in our work. And so Jim and I are going to speak to you a little bit about our implementation process to date. A couple of initial caveats is that we are willing and interested to return in December to talk more specifically about metrics. So you're going to see some action items that are still a little bit high level. We're certainly willing and interested in coming back and sharing some much more tactical metrics of our success. In fact, just this morning we finalized the metrics team that's going to be looking at data associated with our progress on this. So that's the first element of this. And of course, Todd actually immediately following our presentation is going to give a little bit of an overview on strategic budgeting that obviously feeds into this. So with that, we'll kick off. This is just a reminder of what our 5 priorities are. As President Rodriguez mentioned in his remarks, this has been, in a pretty short period of time, integrated really throughout virtually everything we're doing at the university. The President mentioned a couple of examples. The Provost actually brought the School of Public Health's annual report magazine. It's just one example because their center spread is all about the strategic plan and baseline metrics on the strategic plan. So already this has been sort of taken hold on this. I'll also offer to you, just as a quick aside, we showed the strategic planning video that you all saw to every single new freshman and their parents during the summer. So everybody's got a flavor on how we're going about offering our success, and I think this is proof positive on that.
And so we've also woven it into all of our faculty presentations. Some of the deans will have existing strategic plans. This guy happened to be at the stage where he was forming one, so we got an early hit on something that is completely dedicated to the plan. In the case of Rockefeller College, they already had a strategic plan, so they provided us with a crosswalk of how their strategic plan has changed and how it fits with ours. So these are some timeline items this is now back to the university strategic plan that will be on the website. It's on the website now. That is in the purple book that the president held up. And underneath each of the 5 priority areas, which you can already see the 3 goals for each one, you will now see action plans, which is what we're going to show you today. It's developing along the same lines as the goals develop. And you played a very important role in that process by, first of all, giving us poll everywhere. Michael, it was a great addition. used that repeatedly. We had over 1,000 people participate in poll everywhere. We can capture those metrics. So we're going to use the same basic idea, but we won't do poll everywhere here, and being mindful of the time, and in fact, this is our second time through. So this shows the breakdown of the number of action items that we've received, 181 action items from the university in student success, 130 in research excellence. These were all headed by the same committees, same co-chairs, except we had about 30 people instead of 110. And we went through them, and this is what you're about to see.
So the way we've asked units, this is just a little bit, so we're all on the same page in terms of what we're referring to different areas as. Units is defined as either a school, a college, or an administrative division that is led by a vice president or the director of athletics. So those were the entities that were asked to provide action plans by the July 1st deadline. So the number of items that have come up all came up through those divisions. So in academic affairs, as an example, which is a massive unit, all the schools and colleges funnel that up through the provost's office, and that is what is bubbled up to the top here. The implementation team mirrors what the strategic planning development team looked like. So there are still 5 working groups across those 5 priorities. This keeps us true to those 5 priorities. The co-chairs, by and large, are the same from the development group over to the implementation team. We have broadened the implementation team so that it is 30 some odd people from across campus, inclusive of faculty, inclusive of students, inclusive of faculty governance and student governance as well. And so that group has now gone through all of these items, these various activities, and has identified some that rise to what we're characterizing as big ideas, small d, small I, to give you a sense as to what some of the actions are. In the 181 student success items, we can tell you, and Jim is going to talk about student success in 2 seconds, there are a number of them that deal with high impact experiences, internships, education abroad, undergraduate research. In student success, you will see that bubbles up to having more students have those experiences. There's lots of activities that everybody's contributing to. We're trying to roll them up in these priorities.
So the next slide shows the first action item that we've listed here. And again, we've crunched these way down. This is what works so successfully with the strategic plan itself. It's to scale high impact applied learning experiences for our students. For example, Mike and I have talked about the prospect that every student would have an internship, and maybe aggressively something like that, a job shadowing experience in the freshman year. This gets them started connecting with their careers, with their fields of study. They may change their field of study, but if they don't, then they build those connections that will lead them to be successful when they graduate. Significantly expanded online learning. This is important not only for the students on a course-by-course basis, because they might take an online course while they're here, but we also want to reach out and have programs that are online. A one-stop shop is a classic step, and we have spaces around campus where we can do this, where we bring together people. It's also virtual in the sense that we're using EAB very heavily now. It's a $1 billion a year company that does data analytics on our students to create a place where all of us can go, the advisors from the residence hall, the advisors from academic and financial aid to really work with the students. And then finally, a very important priority, something the President's been talking about since the day he got here, establish a graduate school, because one of the things that students need to have here, we need to have here, is more master's students. We're a little bit out of balance that way, and pretty soon my joke is you're going to need a master's degree to work at Burger King. So the world is changing, and we want more master's students, and this is the way to go. So we're going to speed through these, if it's okay with you, and then we'll go back and have a conversation, and we're open for discussion. But this is really the first time that these have been seen by anybody. You're our first group to see what we're doing.
The second priority is research excellence. This is led by Jim Diaz, our Dean of Vice President for Research, and Kevin Williams, actually, who's the Dean of Graduate Education. So here, you'll note the first one is trying to attract high-performing researchers, right? So we're talking about endowed professorships. Jim and his team have identified the Empire Innovation. Another opportunity. So lots of activities under a broader umbrella that would help you attract, again, these high-performing researchers. Pursuing transdisciplinary opportunities. I know you all weren't hot on the notion of constellation when we presented. But what we're trying to get at here is the unique mix of programs that we have that can really make the case
Marketing.
for multi-million-dollar federal
Marketing
research
optics.
grants, given our unique position. And so that's an area that the research excellence priority helps to drive. And then establishing new groundbreaking research centers and institutes. This also, by the way, and Jim can certainly speak to this more, consists of looking at existing research centers and institutes and ensuring that they're still relevant and nimble. So it's not just new, but it's also taking something that exists and recalibrating it accordingly.
Hidden throughout all of this is something that Jim talks about all the time, and that is the need for more high-rate overhead return grants. If you look at us compared to Stony Brook, Buffalo, and Binghamton, our slice of the pie is more dependent on state grants. That's great, we're in Albany. We want to keep them, but we'd like to add in some of these things that can get major federal grants and boost our percent, because that gives us money that we can then apply back to the research area. So diversity and inclusion, Tamara and Elga Wilford co-chaired that. We have 3 action items to present. The first is to establish a faculty diversity program. As provost, I can tell you that the most frequent question I get from our diverse population of students is, why don't the faculty look more like me? So we're about 40% diversity in students, about 10% in faculty. We actually do pretty well if you look at us across the nation, and certainly the students rate us well, and they say the faculty care, but it's just not acceptable. We have to really double down on improving the diversity of the faculty. So that's a very important priority, which will surround a lot of work about searching and hiring and so on. We want to develop a pipeline program with HBCUs and HSIs so that we can attract students to come here, including our own students, by the way, who are diverse, into our graduate programs to become our faculty. And if they don't become our faculty, that's okay. It's a big world out there, but in other places that do this feel that they have created a retention property for their current diverse faculty because they feel the university is doing the right thing. And that's our third bullet, having a strong program of mentoring for faculty of color. This is a unique field that we can talk about because often diverse faculty get asked questions that majority faculty don't by the diverse student population, and that means that they need some help in managing that, and that's a time sink. So this is not something that we can leave out. We don't want to hire diverse faculty and then have them move. Stop there.
Internationalization continues to be a critically important priority for us. The first one has actually been realized as the public health one is going around. A good example is the extent to which international education has been working with the new dean of the School of Public Health to infuse internationalization into their programs. That includes both students here, going abroad, as well as welcoming students here, as well as including internationalization as a curricular item in our courses. So that continues to be an item that we wish to scale across all of our schools and colleges. Expanding the very successful Global Distinction Milestone Program. This again captures global experiences that students have had abroad as well as here. You can have a global experience here on our campus and be able to get credits towards this badge. So expanding Global Distinction Milestone.
Kids love badges. We provide it, they'll do it, they internationalize.
And then, of course, supporting faculty engagement in international teaching and research endeavors, both here and particularly abroad.
And engagement in service, very important priority. The first one we want to do is to disseminate research that addresses the regional needs. We have the School of Public Health, we have the School of Social Welfare, we have a lot of our schools that are getting out in various ways. We have a $10 million Minority Health Disparities Grant. All these things suggest that we can do a lot better here, and we will. We want to disseminate our critical research to community resilience and work with regional partners and develop a center that will share and apply these experiences. This goes even back to things like undergraduate student research experience, so we're connecting dots. And then identify additional resources. So for example, you know the Schuyler building is coming around, we expect, and then right next to it is this thing called the Steam Garden, which is part of the city of Albany. There's tremendous interaction there, but it's not just them. That A here means arts. And so we can use our arts faculty from the College of Arts and Sciences to enter into those. And some of you may remember the Breathing Lights exhibit that one of our faculty got a $1 million Bloomberg Award to demarcate the houses in the area that were abandoned, and that led to lots of social conversations in the city, which was useful. So we have a lot of these things. This one also is one that draws in the community. So these goals may also change a bit as Mark and others reach out and bring in community partners to help us define these action steps. One more quick point. These action steps are this year's action steps. Some of them may last multiple years, but this implementation committee will be back to create year two's action steps, which might cause some changes here.
And again, Todd can speak a little bit more to this, but we're looking at supporting as many of these activities as we possibly can. The discussion that we've had with the implementation team includes how units, again, schools, colleges, or administrative areas can reallocate resources that are already in their areas, using one-time money and then using some limited base monies or recurring money to help infuse and drive a lot of these activities forward. As the provost said, it's a 5-year plan. We are through 2023. This just gives you a flavor of the 2018-2019 activities, some of them, by the way, that we're looking to drive forward. And again, I just want to mention again, in part because we just finished appointing him this morning, the metrics team is positioned. Jack Mahoney, who is our head of institutional research, is leading that metrics team. And so we'll come back in December with a preliminary scorecard to share with the council to give you a sense of where our baseline information is and how we can drive this forward.
So just to wrap up, what we do will be on the website. You'll see the strategic plan as you've known and loved it in that purple document. Underneath each of those diversity areas, you'll see our action steps, which you've just seen. They'll look something like this. We expect some modifications as we talk to the community and get feedback. And then you'll also see links to every one of the schools and colleges, a great example going around from the School of Public Health. All of those things will be subject to the metrics team and their analysis. So we'll be able to present you with a comprehensive scorecard in all the various ways that we've tried to implement the strategic plan. And finally, I'll just say that the president's absolutely right. It's everywhere on campus. People talk about it all the time. It gets mentioned incidentally. Ideas bubble up that we didn't think of, and so we're just going to keep driving on that to create the hour in the authoring our success, which I think is also key. We'll have you take questions.
Did we miss anything?
Questions or comments?
Good work.
If no one else does, is Holly out of the room, I hope? Oh, no, you, no. My comment was going to be, I just don't want him to bring this down to my work area. You have a lot of activities, a real lot of activities, and I just would caution us always that let's just make sure that whatever we do really well. That means less activities, really well, and that is better than spreading ourselves too thin or overcommitting to something that then we don't accomplish. So that applies to everywhere except for my office.
That's a good comment, Michael. The president was actually saying the exact same things to us. So this, I think, gives you a flavor of things. Again, this is our first stop, so with that as an important backdrop, this list may whittle down significantly as we go forward, and I think that's okay.
Right, and remember, we whittled it down a lot anyway because you gave us that advice when we were doing the planning, and we had hundreds of possible goals, so we got down to 15 spread across 5 areas. So this is roughly comparable. Same basic thing will happen when we get the principle, but hold our feet to the fire.
I think you can kill a couple birds with one stone on a lot of these things because, I mean, one of the things we've been doing over, and it's mostly school business, although it includes a couple of students, I believe, from engineering, is they're called field projects. And where somebody will fund, and I think the funding is maybe $7,500. So it's not like a scholarship per se, but it's field project, and one, it's helping either somebody, doing, preparing stuff for, like, actually there's a company where we're trying to commercialize some of the research being done here. But there's no reason a researcher, for example, who maybe looks out and says, gee, I need to hire somebody to do whatever, even if it's over the course of the summer or whatever. You couldn't reach out to somebody who maybe doesn't want to fund a scholarship. They might fund a field project, and it both leads to student success, obviously, and a wonderful experience, but it also furthers the research, and you could actually tie it in any number of ways. I think it could even be something that is almost community service, something related. So I think they're pretty well integrated. A lot of what's up there that that, you know, you're going to maybe hit 2 or 3 of those items with several different things you might be doing. So,
Yeah, and again, just to give you an early taste of this, we got a note from Jack Mahoney, who again is leading our metrics team, and he already gave us a list of, what, it was like 15 preliminary metrics that are high-level metrics, right? So you're talking about time to degree, graduation rates, the number of students participating in high-impact practices, which includes virtually everything you said, employment statistics and the like. So that'll be where we'll set the scorecard up.
well, that's the ultimate.
Yeah, exactly. And then these things, well, the sort of legitimate big ideas that help drive us there, and I think you're right, you can probably build a number.
But I think, yeah, as part of the capital campaign, maybe some of the twist we put on it when we're making some of the pitches is to,
One example is the endowed chairs, and part of it, like internationalization, comes into play. We have this wonderful program that we are funded by NSF for funding students from Taiwan to come here and our students to go to Taiwan to study. So we are working with our alums in Taiwan who are very engaged to endowing the program, because once the NSF grant runs out, we could continue doing that.
Right.
So this is all dovetail with one another.
I was going to even ask, how are we, I should have asked this earlier, how are we funding some of the Puerto Rico stuff? I mean,
Funding, you generated some funding for that?
Actually, we've been pleasantly surprised with the funding that we received. We did it through the social media campaign, and also we did receive some grants from foundations. Mostly the office of our corporate foundation had raised dollars for that, and that would be Rich Becker. So we funded and traveled through that.
In addition to that, the state and SUNY, we received a $500,000 grant from UNICEF to fund.
Oh, wonderful.
that.
Okay.
So,
all right, that was an aside.
By the way, just if I may, one of the strengths that we have, that I can assure you many other universities do not have, is having a council member coming up with an initiative and saying, this is how it links to these 3 core priorities for the university, right? So I think, thank you. I think that's what we need, right? Yeah.
I'm out there in front.
Strategic.
Always.
Yeah.
With the arrows.
Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's a good point.
I can't believe the price on field projects is still $7,500.
It was 2,500 when I was here.
That's a bargain. Raise that price.
Well, it is a bargain, and it's interdisciplinary, and it's like you can hit everything.
So one of the challenges in terms of trying to sort of roll up all of your strategic initiatives so that you have fewer or that you have broader, it then becomes more difficult to try to allocate resources to what your priorities are. Because if the priorities are so broad and so general, anybody can look at it and say, well, what I do is strategic. So we need a strategic plan, and I think we are chipping away at it as Mike and Jim get into the process of developing the actions so that we can be strategic allocating resources to things that we can easily see are priorities. It's not everything can be a priority. So I just want to very quickly go through kind of a scaled-down version of what I presented back in April when I first got here. I did a presentation for you all on our sources of revenue and our cost and kind of where we were with our budgets. I want to update you on that before I talk about a specific strategy of how we're going to generate some income, so generate some resources to support this strategic plan, because we're not there yet. So the appropriated portions of our budget, $323 million, come from state tax support, tuition, our residence hall programs, our fees, and the indirect cost recovery that we get on our grants. The gray boxes that I'm not showing you are monies that are not appropriate to us. For example, the fundraising that we do, that money comes in for specific purposes. It's not part of our operating budget. And there's other categories there as well. The President touched briefly on the tuition. We know we're doing extremely well on our tuition this year. We're hitting our goals for the first time. Here's a look over multiple years of what our planned enrollment was, the purple versus our actual enrollment. And we are thrilled to say that in the fall of 2018, that we are actually exceeding our enrollment target by a few. That breaks down. You can look at that from our undergraduate head count. We've done fairly well. We've been very consistent with what we've done with our undergraduate enrollment, and we're actually exceeding it a little bit this year. Next slide is our graduate enrollment, and you can see that we have had some gaps in there, and as the president pointed out, we had higher expectations. We planned for that. We spent some of that money, and we didn't hit those targets, so we've had to make some corrections, and we're moving right along. This is how we spend that money. Next slide here. So this is just a quick breakdown, which probably doesn't surprise anybody. The lion's share of our expenditures go to people. The salaries and fringe benefits that we have to pay, which are extremely high. We have supplies and travel, student scholarships. We make a significant contribution to student scholarships above and beyond what we're able to do through our fundraising arm at the university. Library acquisitions, utilities, debt service, all of those kinds of things that are expenses. We're going to focus in on the staff side of this. This is a look over the last 6 years of how the staff at the university has grown. Okay, so I want you to keep in mind that previous slide where we showed you, where we talked about what the enrollment growth was. If you look at our staff, we've grown by 303 positions since 12-13. Some of that has been on the administrative side of the house, some of it has been on the teaching side of the house. So we've increased our teaching faculty by about 22% over this period of time. We've not completely recovered from the recession where we lost about 338 positions. Those were mostly administrative positions that we lost during those periods of time, but we have bounced back a little bit, but not completely there. So next slide, thank you. This is a slide that sort of puts in context our enrollment growth relative to our staffing. We have grown our staffing by 15% over a period of time where our enrollment only grew by 2%. Okay, so we are maybe outpacing ourselves in terms of where we need to be. So that's led to a financial condition, which we'll show on the next slide, but I want to make one more point. So our state support has been flat. We talked a little bit about this last time. We have not gotten any additional state support in the last 3 years. Yes, there has been substantial commitments from the state to support Excelsior. It's great for our students. It has meant less money for us to run our institution because we don't get the full reimbursement from the state. Yes, the state has put more money into TAP, which is, again, wonderful for the needy students out there. That has not put any money into our budget. So the amount of money we get from the state every year has remained flat for the last 4 to 5 years. At the same time, we've seen salary increases. Okay? In a typical year where we see a 2% across the board plus a 1% discretionary salary increase for those that are eligible, because we have different unions here, and some are eligible for discretionary increases, some are not. But in a typical year, and we know the next 5 years, this is what it looks like. We're looking at about $4.5 million of additional salary expenditures each of those years. The governor has said, we're not giving you any more state support because we've given you the benefit of a tuition increase. Use your tuition money to pay for your salary increases. Okay? That doesn't add up because for us, a $200 per year tuition increase, which is what we've been authorized to do and what the SUNY has been doing, generates $2 million a year of revenue for us. So each year we're actually falling behind. We're effectively being cut by $2.5 million. So that is a significant challenge for us. Salary increases are important. Obviously we want to recruit and retain the best people we can. So we want to do that, but it's a challenge for us. So next slide, please. So this gets to the bottom line. In 1819, if you look at all of the revenue that we think we're planning to bring in as an institution, and you look at all the expenses that we have planned, and you subtract, we're spending $4 million more than we're taking in as an institution. Okay? Now, on a $323 million appropriated budget, that's a small percentage point. Okay? However, we operate too close to the margins, right? So this is not a comfortable position for in. So we have to reverse this trend. This number needs to become positive so that we then have the opportunity to invest in our strategic plan. Okay? And as you can see, the out years, the situation isn't getting any better. Okay? So we have to do something much, much different than we've been doing to deal with that. And I'm not going to go through, go back to the GDR. I'm not going to go through all the different line items in here, but you can see under the revenue column, we are counting on the tuition increase because we know it's been approved. It's 99% likely to go through. So we will see additional revenue in those out years. What we have not planned on is revenue from new enrollment, okay? So we're sort of not going to count our chickens before they're hatched, okay? We are planning for some modest enrollment growth. The president referred to an optimal size committee, planning committee. We're thinking probably a 5% growth is realistic for us. And we did see a very small uptick in enrollment for the fall of 18 that we think we can absorb. So this financial condition will improve a little bit. If we were to grow by 5%, it would generate about $2.5 to $3 million of additional revenue for us. So that would be go a long way in helping us deal with this deficit. The other significant cost on here are the salary increases, and there's $9.75 million because there's a retroactivity portion to the contracts that were just agreed to that go back a few years. We're getting new information on what those contract commitments might cost us, and they might be slightly less than we anticipated. We always budget high and conservatively. So there might be a few $100,000 of relief there, but it's not going to fix $4 million deficit. So this is not a crisis for this institution. We're not panicked. We're very concerned. We need to do some things differently and kind of reverse this trend, if you will. But we can get through this for sure. So now we go to the next slide. So one of the things that we're thinking of, well, we're not thinking about it anymore. We are doing at this point. We have developed what we're referring to as a workforce planning committee. Essentially, what that means is to look much more seriously than we have maybe in the past, the recent past, in terms of commitments that we're making with positions and what positions are most critical to us. And this goes back to having a good strategic plan that can tell us what our priorities are, okay? Because we don't have to be all things to all people. We have to be much more laser focused on what we're doing. So salaries are the largest category of expenditures that we have. We have done a lot of exercises as an institution over the recent years to manage all expenditure categories except for salaries, okay? We've cut way back on expenses and things that we're doing, but not really focused on the number of positions. You see the growth of the positions. The reason for that is because we've had a very decentralized approach to position control. We're a big university. We relied on people to do what they thought was right, and most of the time it was right by them for what they were doing. But we think it's led to a few things. We think it's led to some duplication of effort. That's something we have to explore a little deeper. We know that it's led to uneven levels of support. We know we have salary inequity issues, and it's absolutely led to our inability to move money from things that we think are less important to things that we think are more important. So we're looking to centralize that. So each year we fill roughly 300 positions. You remember from a previous slide, we have roughly 2,700 positions at any given time. About 300 of those turn over every year. A lot of those, about half, are in trades, cleaning, things like that. But 150 of those, roughly, are for professional positions, some of the higher salary positions. And these exclude teaching positions. Okay, so we have some turnover with teaching as well that would be outside of this process. So next slide, please. So we're putting together a workforce planning committee. This has already been constituted with the intent that all position decisions should be centralized, that we should be making institutional decisions on what are the most important positions to fill at any given time. This is maybe extremely popular at this university right now. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, this will be for only non-instructional. So we don't want to be involved in a conversation about whether or not we need to fill a position in chemistry versus history. That's what a provost does. That's what deans do. We're not going to be involved in that. We're going to be involved from a central perspective of looking at what the budget should be. We say the provost has X amount of dollars to manage. We'll make sure he manages within that, but he's going to decide how to allocate that. But for everything else, we're going to have some central conversations. So we have a group that's going to meet monthly, and we're going to review a number of key factors. Go to the next slide, please. It's kind of a busy eye chart here, but these are the kinds of questions we're going to be asking people when they have vacancies or they're requesting to create a new position. how specifically does filling this position advance our strategic plan? Specifically is the key word there, right? How will students be negatively impacted if we don't fill this position? So tell us, how bad are things going to be? Okay. So when I got here, I'd like to use the example of our purchasing department. We had 5 vacancies in our purchasing department. They said, well, we need to fill all 5. And I said, well, how about we don't fill any? What would happen? And they said, well, it would really slow everything down. I said, well, what's the metric? I said, okay, currently today it takes you 2 business days to process a purchase order. What would it be if you didn't fill those 5? And I said, probably 3 or 4. I said, I'll let the president know. Okay, we'll be fine. Okay, so really challenging ourselves to look at what what can we stop doing? Okay, we're not into the we could do more with less. That cliche is done, right? So it's how do we do the same with less, or how do we do less with less? Okay, there's probably some things we can stop doing. So these are the kinds of questions that we're going to be asking people so that we can manage our workforce a little bit differently, looking at the org chart, performance programs, all that good stuff. All right? Yes, question?
I'm pretty ignorant on what's the difference in terms of breakdown of how many instructional versus how many, what you're talking about, the other.
Yeah,
Because I'm hoping this is done as well on the instructional side, quite frankly.
Something, right. So I could let the provost speak to that, but basically what the provost has put together, if I could try to channel a little bit, is we're looking at data profiles. So back to some of the points that you were making earlier, right? So when we get vacancies, if those vacancies are coming from academic areas where there isn't the student demand that there once was, then we'll move those positions to where there is demand. Okay.
So let me just amplify that a little bit. Until this summer, led by the president, all the vacancies were filled by the deans in their units, and then we challenged them. But starting this summer, we centralized all faculty lines in the provost's office. And because we're trying to help the CFO and the university, we've reduced by a factor of 2/3 this year the number of lines that have been allocated out. So this is something that happens basically once a year, because faculty search authorizations are done over the summer for searches in the fall. And I'm not talking about lecturers, adjuncts, I'm talking about professors. If the professor leaves, then usually we replace that person with an adjunct until we can hire another professor. So those are the conversations, and then I'll add one last thing. We developed over the last year something called the departmental profile, which compares the revenue they generate, which largely comes from tuition, to the expenses they have, which largely comes from professorial salaries. And we're talking a place like the chemistry department.
And how much research they generate.
That's true. So all those are included. So the central graph on this departmental profile is that financial graph. Then surrounding it are all the graphs which show their grants, their enrollment trends, the student-faculty ratios. You sit down with that departmental profile and say, do you deserve higher? And that's not just on the basis of the money, but the money starts the conversation. And if you're a department, you don't really want to be in the position of being a loss leader, arguing that we must hire in your unit because it's critical to the mission of the university. It's better if you actually have some revenue on the table, and then you can make those other arguments. So those conversations are paralleling in the teaching area. We're talking about a change from about $3 million a year in allocations for faculty hires to something that's much less. So we put about $1.5 million a year into the budget. Now, this year we can't contribute anything because these are authorizations to search to pay people for next year. But next year, this will begin to make substantial contributions to the deficit that you were seeing from the academic side. It makes no sense to have the professorial salaries not contributing the way he's talking about with position vacancies.
It seems to me to accomplish the strategic plan, it's not, you can't be just one for one with this. In fact, you're going to have to make targeted hires, often a team, like 2 or 3 people. So you're going to have to kind of hoard some positions from somewhere, and then go out and say, okay, come on down with your lab and your dollars and so forth. So by definition, it must be centralized, and it has to be coordinated like that. And it's going to be awful for some people. There's no question it's going to be painful. But I don't know. I think the demographics are generally working against us on enrollment. Against everybody, not just us. So if we're going to have an edge and be, one of the survivors. We've got to do it. It's a bitter pill, and it's going to take years.
The fact that we got this far without centralization, to me, is a very good sign. Because that means that you can start to extract the value by centralization. And if we were
It's a huge
centralizing all of this
you're right,
time,
it's a
it would be
huge
a little bit more concerning. I think in those two areas, there's a ton of. Great.
All right, so if you go to the next slide, I'll wrap up. Our hope is that by going through this process, that we, at the end of the day, we can actually be better at what we do, right? Get very focused on operational efficiencies. Absolutely, this will generate savings. Our average salary is $75,000 a year for a professional position. We've got 150 of those turning over every year. We get 10% of those, and we'll be doing quite well. We'll turn this around real quickly in a very short period of time, be able to report a positive balance, and then having really good conversations about how do we reinvest that money, right? And what can we do in the most strategic for us through the reallocation process. So that's just something we wanted to share with you of what we're doing, so that you can continue to be aware of what our financial position is and some of the strategies that we're deploying to do it that will keep us healthy.
And as Todd said, and some of you commented, this is a very difficult thing to do, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you get significant pushback, and we've had some intense conversations about this, right? Because of course, that means that some people feel that you take away their authority to make their hires, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I profoundly think that this is certainly the right thing to do at this point in time for the university at Albany. And if it's nothing else, it accomplishes one major goal, that people stop thinking about, this is my unit, this is my staff, these are my faculty too. We are thinking as a university, and these are the university faculty, the university staff, and we need to think about the success of the institution more broadly than the success of the individual units. And so I think that will, to a large extent, accomplish that as we move forward. It'll be painful for everybody, but I think it's the right thing to do.
One position you might want to have in the budget is a bodyguard.
I was thinking.
Get him some pepper.
Please don't walk next to me.
I think he's the chair of the committee, so he can improve that position.
Yeah.
Didn't take you long to become the most hated person on campus, right?
Just FYI, I think many of us remember the angst over the, whatever it was, the French department or the German department. So I'm going to say 6 months ago, I'm down in the gym in the basement of my building, pedaling away, watching Jeopardy. And do you know it was a question on Jeopardy? Believe it or not, what school or something to that effect eliminated its classical domain? And I was just like, oh.
Welcome to the University at Albany.
Exactly. I about fell off the bike,
I got that very right.
But going back to Mark.
Unbelievable.
It is. Going back to Mark, to some extent, it's not only what you do, but how you do it, right? And so one of the good things, one of the great things that Todd has been doing is he's going out and talking to different groups and different stakeholders and saying, this is why we're doing this, these are the reasons, and this is going to be the impact. You might not like it at this time, but here are the reasons. And so people might not agree with the idea, but as long as they know why is it that we're doing this, I think we generate a better understanding. So he doesn't need it.
I have a slide.
We just, side note, I just did this for our company where I created a human logistics position where the person is in charge of all our entire workforce, 1,000 people, all to one person, and all of the management people, but because it's clear, it's transparent, and it's happening. So I think this is interesting. All right, fantastic. Let's move to the academic calendar, and Karen.
Right here. How are you? I've just signed up to be Todd's bodyguard. But my presentation also comes with the need for a bodyguard sometimes too.
Todd's going to be your bodyguard.
So I think you are, if you don't know, I'm actually the registrar here at the university. And I think you are the last group that I'm going to present to on my roadshow. So this is kind of small, but I'm going to go over it. What we are proposing are some significant changes to the academic calendar. Most notably, the university plans the academic calendar from year to year, and we have no ability to plan out around that. So we are seeking feedback on a 5-year planning calendar where we would have all the dates and deadlines in advance so students would come in and they would know when they're going to graduate. They would know when their breaks are, all this would be in advance. And the second most significant piece of the proposal is that we would no longer suspend on any religious holidays that were not state or federal holidays. The suspension on the holidays can sometimes be disruptive. And I say sometimes, but more and more we're hearing how disruptive it is to instruction. If you want to go, you can actually go to the student schedule, JD. I brought a sample of the student schedule. So typically we suspend on, for the Jewish holidays, we suspend the day before at 2:35. We suspend the day of the holiday, and then we bring the students back at 12:35 the following day. So we lose 2 days of instruction. We have 2 Jewish holidays in the fall, we have Labor Day in the fall, and we have Thanksgiving in the fall. So there's a lot of missed days. So this student schedule, and if you scroll way down, this student has classes at the end of the day too. So I think there's 3 Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes. So the Jewish holidays this year, without suspending the day before and the day after, we could not do that this past semester, but just suspending on the holidays and Labor Day. And then Thanksgiving recess. If you go up to the top, JD. Student misses 3 classes 4 times, 3 of the days in 1 month. That's significant. This student was asked to actually attend a makeup class on Thursday when they're not scheduled for class because the Tuesday-Thursday class was so significantly far ahead of the Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. And this student works. So I thought this was a really good example. I have 5 to 7 students that rotate in and out of our office as well, in the registrar's office. They need to work. Summer employment does not cover the tuition bill anymore. So they are working, the ones that work for me are working 15 to 20 hours a week, and they need to work. You know, the faculty member in this case was very accommodating, but it was a significant disruption. So what we are proposing, if you pull up the fall calendar as an example, is to have a consistent number of contact days in the academic calendar. So we have a start and an end date, and we have a lot of things, we've had a lot of things over the years that we value as a campus and wanted to be smack dab in the middle of the calendar. And we're finding more and more that it's very challenging and difficult to have all of those things and still provide instruction to our students. And I sit around the table here and listen to the high impact practices, and those are being affected by these challenges related to the calendar. So what we're proposing is that we have a consistent start date on a Monday. We would leave Labor Day. And if you could scroll up, just bring this up a little bit, we would have what we would call fall break, complemented by the Thanksgiving holiday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we lose an equal amount of days. What happens with the suspension on the holidays, and we do this in the spring as well for Passover and Easter Monday, is that we have an inconsistent, if you go all the way down to the bottom, we have an inconsistent number of contact days. So this is the piece that I have to monitor as registrar very closely when I put together an academic calendar for the campus. In the past, I've always, throughout some of these discussions, I've always said, to me, it doesn't matter what's in between. It's that we are compliant with state, federal, and SUNY guidelines on the number of instructional days. So 13 is the minimum number of once a week classes. 39 is for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and 2 day a week would be 28. So when we start with 13, if you had 13 and 13, if you had 26, you're already under the minimum. So we consistently, as the holidays fluctuate across the calendar, would end up having an inconsistent number of days, and at sometimes the potential to be below the minimum number of contact days, especially if we have snow day or or cancellation. So we would, again, we would start on a Monday. We would have the extra day to complement that Monday here. We would always start finals on a Wednesday, always end on a Tuesday, always grade on a Thursday, and start our winter. So the reason we weren't able to suspend the day before and the day after on the holidays this fall was that we would not have enough days to run our winter session, meaning 20 days. So if we were to have extended the winter session further into January, we would have started the spring semester later, ended the spring semester later, started the summer session later, and then it just, kind of kicks the can down the road. I've been giving this presentation, I think this is the 8th, 10th maybe, in a 1-month period. We've met with the faith-based leaders, we have met with students just as yesterday, and the largest amount of feedback revolves around the fact that this needs to be well communicated. It is state law that students and faculty can observe their beliefs without penalty. And so that's what the concern has been around is, I have to go up to my faculty member and I have to ask for the day off if you're no longer suspending on my particular holiday. This would allow some consistency for the entire university because, as you know, we don't suspend on every religious holiday. So when we talk about diversity and we talk about the landscape of our students, this would provide a fair playing field for all and put the students in front of the faculty more. I did receive some feedback. I think somebody mentioned the WCI program. They've had some challenges. That's a high impact, group. It lays into retention, writing and critical inquiry.
It's a small freshman class that we also teach in the second half of the year because we can't get them all in. Taught to students under 20, designed to be small. That's one of the high impact practice definitions by a dedicated cohort of lecturers. It's a remarkable program. I'll be happy to explain it to you at a later time. But they are very happy now that we have some consistency.
If you use that student's schedule as an example, you expect this to be a high impact practice where you're building towards retention and developing the rapport with the student, and they've missed 5 classes in 1 month. It doesn't really
Do you
work well.
have evening and Saturday classes?
We do. Yes, we have classes right up through 11 o'clock. We have a limited amount of Saturday classes. A lot of them are at the graduate level, and
Saturday morning lab.
Yes, we have had Saturday morning lab, and actually I was just talking to our Director of Advisement Services about it today. So some of this plays into another activity that I do as registrar, which is facilities planning, classroom management, and we, as we grow the university and we undertake renovations, we have limited space, and so it's fitting all of these, pieces of the puzzle together to make sure that we're offering the students a good experience.
The provost's office also cancels on snow in concert with other offices, and she's my enemy. Because at 5 in the morning, she's arguing, it's not snowing enough, I need those days.
Looks good at my house.
This helps everybody.
I know, and I live
People
far.
that, went to school here 20 years ago and had no snow days, 30 years ago.
Never
no
had snow
snow
days. You don't say New York, what do you expect?
I
It's a
know,
mouse.
I walk the school uphill both ways.
Yeah, back in the day.
So I will end with a comment from a faculty member in 2015, because we have discussed this since the Kegs and Eggs incident. We have discussed the potential of a 5-year planning calendar, and we couldn't move it forward because everybody was afraid of what it would look like when we had already made one big significant change to the calendar. So the comment from the faculty member was provide more focus on education and research and less on arranging the calendar to include multiple variables. And I do want to say that we have taken a long, hard look at our peer and aspirational institutions, and most of them have a short February break. They have the Thanksgiving, and then they have the spring break in the middle in March, just like we're proposing here. So we've gotten some comments, and stop me when you've had enough, about why would you stop suspending on the religious holidays and then now suspend on Columbus Day. And so that is, it has nothing to do with Columbus Day, move it up or down, and we're calling it a fall break. It has everything to do with this visual pattern and the numbers and the consistency. And it's consistent with other institutions.
Questions?
Thank you.
Comments? Community concerns?
I'll say that for graduate students, there's a class I'm enrolled in Monday, it's only met twice.
And the other problem with that is if you want to drop that class, you've only been there once. And now, you know, according to the academic calendar, if you drop that, you're fully liable. So you don't even get to try it on.
What does the March month look like?
Oh, yeah, could you show the screen, please? So the March break, the St. Patrick's Day parade is always the Saturday before St. Patrick's Day, unless it's on St. Patrick's Day. So we work with the City of Albany to make sure that we are wrapping around the holiday appropriately. And Cliff Kim does a wonderful job of getting me, you know, I know what the dates are, because if you know, they tell you it's the Saturday before, but we confirm. So this is actually a good split. Yep, and then if you go down, we would always start finals on a Thursday and on a Wednesday. Commencement, I'm always reminded when I see this. Commencement has asked for 4 days for graduation. This is the only way I can give them 4 days. This is also a grading day. We need a week off before we start summer because we need to empty the campus, rehabilitate the campus, clean up, patch up, and get one group out and one group in. And then we start summer.
And, you know, just using a scientific term, right? Trying to plan your academic calendar every year on a yearly basis is crazy. It's just simple, right? So providing a 5-year calendar, you know, when classes start, when classes end, when the exams are, when you have breaks, and you can predict when commencement is, right? You can predict this for the next 4 or 5 years. I mean.
So it's going to be a rolling 5-year calendar?
Yes.
Next year, we'll just add another.
Or I'll add 5 and then I'll retire.
Excellent. Any more questions? No?
Thank
very
you.
much. Good job. Put your wallets away, parking is on.
Oh,
Well, I myself cannot do that job. By the way, this calendar addresses some religious holidays, and the Iranian and Baha'i holidays are actually closed, so that's our spring breaks. I appreciate that. That's the rumor you're starting now. You're taking the whole week off. Since we last met, our marketing team used the brand research and received input from more than 200 stakeholders around campus to construct a brand identity platform. The identity is rooted in the idea that the University at Albany does best to enable the students and its people to offer success. As our strategic plan also is the same, you know, offering our success. In short, we help people seize their moment and realize their greatness. So the brand expression is unleash greatness. This concept was tested by more than 70 students, and the feedback was exactly what we needed, we were looking for. It makes them feel confident, instill pride, and convey excitement. We are working with a Rochester-based advertising agency, Dixon Schwall, I'm sure I didn't say that right, to finalize the style guide, and the marketing team is right now creating materials for the phase 1, which is on-campus launch of Unleash Greatness, which is going to be over the next few weeks. That means right around homecoming. And excuse me. And we also engaged a Manhattan-based media buyer to help us identify our best opportunities for phase 2 and 3, which is launching of our brand in Capital Region and Greater New York City area, especially where we are recruiting for students and such. And My update regarding development and advancement campaign is we raised over $15.5 million last year. And as the president said, we had a setback, and our goal was to reach $100 million by the campaign kickoff, and which is going to be October 19th. I am here to tell you, despite the setbacks, we are going to be at that amount during our campaign. I'm very confident. I cannot publicly announce it. We're going to be over it, yes. Yeah, we're going to be over it. It's going to be some very generous gifts that were in the pipeline, and our friends have stepped up. And I invite all of you to join us during the celebrations. I want to thank all of you for your ongoing support, and as Michael said, I will be back. If all of those of you supported. So I'm happy to answer any questions on this, and we have one more item for the next agenda. Can I go to that one? Okay.
Sure.
You have a memo from Michael in front of you. I am here to seek your approval of the namings opportunities for our School of Engineering building. All of these namings are within the guidelines that was approved by this body, and also my team, along with the School of Engineering staff and our physical plant folks, got together, and the namings are based on the size of the space, the cost of renovation, and the visibility of the space. So, for example, if we just factored in, this is for the new council member, the size of the auditorium and the cost of renovation, the cost will be somewhere around $1.5 million. But because we know the visibility will this space will have, the minimum for it is $2.5 million. That's
So
how it is.
before we discuss, can we just get a motion on the table?
I'm sorry.
Somebody move it?
Sure.
Move in a second. All right, fire away.
Okay, so based on those guidelines, these names have been put in place. And as far as the academic and naming endowments that are there, this is once again within the guidelines that's been established by the University at Albany Foundation. And we, in conjunction with the Provost Office, this is not new, this is old. And the way it works, for example, once again, for an endowed chair at the University at Albany here is $2 million. And our spending rate at the University of Albany Foundation is 4%. That means annually 4% of the interest that is being generated from the $2 million will be given to the department or division that controls the endowment. So that's how those dollars have been established.
So I'm almost afraid to ask this question, and I promise you it's not loaded, but in the physical spaces, are those perpetual namings?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That has been our practice.
And if this has been blessed by,
You know who?
This is within their guidelines, and so was the previous gift that some people know here. We
Well, that's
have
a
always
scary
abided
thought
by the
then.
guidelines of the.
But
that's good.
We know the-
That's good. I'm glad we're doing the right thing.
We have always done.
I'm glad we're
This is,
doing it.
this is a practice, I think, once a year I come in front of this
Yeah.
body.
No, this is absolutely, I can't speak more in favor of it. Absolutely, I was just wondering.
But wait a minute, I just want to make sure I understand. If this is within the guidelines as was earlier stuff, are there the secret guidelines that, maybe
No.
that's not the right term, the guidelines that when you come in with, I mean, if somebody said to you, I'll give you $10 million to make, name this the John Fallon engineering building,
That would be absolutely no issue.
we're sure.
If it were to be the John Fallon, if you just read the check right now, you could do that, right? There's a sort of.
I just want to, you know what I mean, I don't want to know that the rules
There's a
can change.
differentiation that's swimming between what they see as individual namings, that is, just to use your example, right?
Right.
John Fallon.
Versus Sony.
Versus the IBM building. So they're making a differentiation between individual goods, which can be in perpetuity, and actually, system, SUNY has approved at least one or more gifts in perpetuity recently named after individuals. What the
There's no bad.
what they're having hesitation with is the corporate naming of buildings and infrastructure.
That's more like sponsorship.
And so they're looking at, the
Yeah, we want
chancellor
the
has
Harvey
indicated that they're establishing
Weinstein
a.
engineering building though either.
Right.
So.
And again, I didn't want us,
And
I mean,
there's-
I'm not trying to, I just,
Yeah,
you know, I mean, I just don't want us to
Yeah.
spin our wheels
Even though,
and then
even
have
though
someone
the
say, I'll
John
do it.
Fallon naming sponsorship would come from John Fallon's not-for-profit foundation. It's a corporation. But, I'm sorry, I'm not taking, carry on,
To
carry
be
on.
clear, Michael, before approval, there is no guidelines at the moment at SUNY stopping anyone from naming it for a corporation. I just want to, it's never been. So we were never out of
Well,
compliance with
well,
what we proposed
we
there.
understand that, but I guess, I mean, I'm just worried that we do this only to have the rug pulled out from under us.
And all I can tell you is
I'm happy to
that
do it.
the system right now is working, and presumably they are establishing or have established a committee that's going to be taking a comprehensive look at these naming opportunities. And I can tell you, we were just at a president's meeting, SUNY president's meeting with the chancellor, in which she presented a proposal for naming endowments, which Fahim presents to this right here. And we, this is basically exactly what the
They took it from our,
Right,
actually,
exactly.
webpage.
And so, you know,
Okay.
we're pretty confident that we're going in the right direction, but there might be changes in the future depending on this committee and their recommendations to the board and what the board ultimately approves.
Anything else before we move the question?
I'm sorry. I bumped the number for undergraduate scholarships and graduate scholarships.
Undergraduate scholarship is $25,000. That's sort of university-wide for entire university. So that's something that I will take up with the foundation board. Just to get.
I would just suggest, and I know,
I will
I know
take the
it's,
suggestion.
that I'm involved with a couple of other institutions and their number's 100.
Oh, I understand. When 7 years ago, we moved from $10,000 to $25,000 here.
So maybe,
I'd make sure Bill Roller hears that, because
I
he's
mean,
going
and
to be.
it's an important issue because if you're getting $25,000 for an endowment and you're generating 4%, you're earning $800 to $1,000 a year, which really doesn't
helps
support.
but doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Anyway, I just,
That's a good point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
okay.
Let's move the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried unanimously.
Thank you.
The Pat Caldwell ladies' room, $5,000.
$100,000 bill coming your way.
It's gonna be like,
I'm not
Next.
going there.
I'm a right to the train station, so.
We do have one more resolution, if you would bear with me. Whereas our friend James Mallard served as the faculty
Welcome back.
representative on the University Council for 2017 and 18. And whereas in that position, he effectively represented the faculty of the University at Albany, thus facilitating the work of the council and meeting its statutory responsibilities under Section 356 of the New York Education Law. And whereas he offered important insight and counsel to the University Council on a broad range of issues brought before the body for consideration and action. And whereas he undertook this assignment in a professional and responsible manner, now be it resolved that in recognition of his service as the official faculty representative, the council expresses its gratitude for his active participation and leadership, and be it further resolved that the council extends its good wishes to him as he assumes his duties as the chair of the University Senate for the 2018-19 academic year. Could I have a motion?
Second.
Second. Can we all approve that unanimously?
Aye.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
And as you can see, we're not letting him go.
I see that, I see that.
I just want to tell Zena that she has to show up in a snowstorm at a meeting to actually get the plaques.
I've done it. I'm good. I like snow.
There you go.
We have no old business. Is there any new business to be brought before the body? We're going to wait until she's not here.
I was going to ask the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
If there is no old business or new business, I think just one more motion to adjourn. Motion.
Go for it.
Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.